let's see. There's something I was going to say. I did not bring chocolate. I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't. Nothing related to that. Or, by the way, do you know what my book's about? I hope everyone here, no surprises. Last night I did an event at a bookstore in Pasadena, and it was near. It's near kind of like a kind of old person's pasture, if you will. And they come for the free event. And so I don't think they had any idea what my book was about. And so I started talking and started saying, Holy Foreskin, blah, blah, blah. And about, a couple minutes in, I got lots of blank stares, and I had the feeling that a lot of them were saying to themselves, what the hell am I doing here? So I just want to make sure right now that you all know that I'm going to be using the words holy and foreskin in succession to each other. So tonight, a couple times. Who here had heard of the Holy Foreskin before? If you, or maybe you've never heard of it at all. Maybe you were one of those people who were saying, "What am I doing here?" But anyone had heard of the Holy Foreskin at all in any way? All right. So except for my wife. So I hadn't heard of it either until 2002, when I was living in Rome for a few months, and my wife and I went on a day trip, as one does when you're living in Rome, to this place called Calcutta, this medieval hill town. It's very bewitching. It's set atop 450-foot cliffs. It's really amazing. And when we were there, we were walking around and with all the rest of the Roman day trippers, and we'd start talking to an American guy there, and he was telling us about the village, and he mentioned that until relatively recently, the village was home to this bizarre holy relic, improbable relic, the foreskin of Christ. And so, of course, that kind of stuck with me. And then after that, we moved to New York, and I was busy trying to get a job and pay my rent and so on. And then it was only a couple years later when I re-entertained this idea of writing something about the village of Calcutta and this bizarre relic, and so we ended up moving there to this village. And so a couple things about the relic that I just wanted to share with you to give you kind of a general sketch of its history, because it's a really fascinating history that I found. I got after we moved there, I got myself into the Vatican Library, which was a feat in itself, I felt like. And if you know where to look in the Vatican Library, you can find lots of ancient, centuries-old documents written just about Jesus's foreskin. Who knew that hidden within the stacks are these tracts about the Holy Foreskin. And so I found lots of these. And strangely enough, when I moved back to New York after spending a year in Calcutta, I started doing some research in the New York Public Library, and I found a lot of the same documents that are in the Vatican Library about the Holy Foreskin in the New York Public Library as well. So it was really weird. I guess I didn't have to get myself into the Vatican, but I did anyway. So there's only one line about Jesus' circumcision in the Bible, in the book of Luke. Just mentions that he was circumcised on his 8th day, and that's it. And then, the Holy Foreskin kind of disappears for several centuries. And then we hear this story that Charlemagne, the great 9th century Gallic king, supposedly received the foreskin from an angel while he was praying in the Holy Sepulchre in Rome. And then he took the foreskin, and as the story goes, he was in St. Peter's in Rome, and he was being crowned Holy Roman Emperor on Christmas Day in the year 800. And as a gift, as you would do, I guess, if you were being crowned Holy Roman Emperor, you would give the Pope your copy of Jesus' foreskin. And so that's what he did. He gave Pope Leo III his holy foreskin, and Pope Leo III put it in this chapel called the Sancta Sanctorum, the Holy of Holies, which still exists to this day. And then that's it. That should be the end of the history of the Holy Foreskin, right? It's locked in this chapel with the heads of Saints Peter and Paul, a chunk of the table where the Last Supper was. I thought I was going to get that wrong. And one time in Italy, this guy was talking to this Italian guy, and he translated it as the ultimate dinner. Yeah, because l'ultima cena, you know, and he just used the wrong words, but I guess the ultimate dinner also would work. Which sounds like something you'd see on like Bravo or something, you know, a TV show, the ultimate dinner with Mario Batali or something. Anyway, so there's a chunk of the piece of the the table from the Last Supper that's still tacked onto the wall if you go to the Sancta Sanctorum today. Which, by the way, until a few decades ago, women were not allowed in. So, thankfully, you know, at least half of you could, or all of you now could go into the Sancta Sanctorum. Anyway, so you would think that'd be the end of the history of the Holy Foreskin, but in fact, not long after news of this relic emerged or popped up, if you will, other relics began emerging in Europe, holy foreskins. Strangely enough, you can you know, talk amongst yourselves why this is, but almost all of the other holy foreskins, about a dozen, were in France. I don't know what France's like, you know, fetish is with holy foreskins, but lots of monasteries and towns, cathedrals and stuff boasted a holy foreskin, and they said that theirs was. They said theirs also came from Charlemagne as well, but the Pope had his, and you know, through the centuries, the popes granted plenary indulgences to people who came to venerate in front of and pray in front of the holy foreskin. You could, you know, you could cut 10 years out of your time in purgatory if you came and prayed in front of Jesus' foreskin in Rome. So there were benefits to that as well. Then in 1527, something interesting happened. There was a huge sack of Rome. German and Spanish troops came in, and they were hungry for booty because they weren't getting paid much. And once they broke down the walls of Rome, they went wild, you know, and they stole everything that they could possibly steal, including reliquaries. They didn't care about what was inside. Luther had just hatched the Reformation, and so they didn't care about the relics. They just wanted the bejeweled reliquaries. And so one German soldier went into the Sancta Sanctorum and swiped the holy foreskin and its reliquary, and started making his way back to Germany, but the documents say he was injured. And so he got 30 miles north of Rome and was captured in a village called Calcutta. And he was kept there in a prison. And the interesting thing is that they didn't know he had the holy foreskin on him, but he thought, if they find out that I'm concealing the holy foreskin or this reliquary, they'll, you know, the punishment will be more severe. So in his cell, he hid it under a pile of manure. And they let him go, and then 30 years later, a priest found the reliquary in there, and then the holy foreskin was at last found again. Then, during the Reformation, and then a couple centuries later, the French Revolution, most of all those other holy foreskins disappeared out of this kind of fervor against the church and authority. So they were all gone, but still existing was this one in Calcutta, because even though Calcutta to this day, you know, is 30 miles north of Rome. It was only in the 1950s when the government built a road to Calcutta. Before that, you know, until 60 years ago, say, the only way you could get to Calcutta was what's described as a mule road. So the holy foreskin existed in relative obscurity, and even in 1900, the Pope had enough of the holy foreskin, because in France, another town claimed that they found their holy foreskin that was known in the Middle Ages as having one. And so there was all this controversy. Well, there's one near Rome, there's one in this French town. So the Pope said, okay, Pope Leo XIII, in the year 1900, issued a decree stating that anyone who speaks of or writes about a holy foreskin will be excommunicated. Anyone here Catholic? Anyone? Yeah? Excommunicated, because you're in the room tonight. I'm excommunicated probably. So that's it, just one? Just the two of us? All right, so anyway, so, but until the Vatican II reforms in the early 60s, on the church calendar, January 1st was the day of the Holy Circumcision. You can't make this stuff up. It's really amazing. They removed it in after Vatican II, but on January 1st, every year in Calcutta, until the relic disappeared, they still did a procession around the village with the reliquary, and the villagers would swoon and, you know, try to kiss the reliquary. There were lots of miracles that occurred with the relic, and most of them were of a fertility-giving nature, which is interesting. Christ's foreskin, fertility. There's a kind of connection there. Yeah?
So when